Hello, Blue Jays fans, and welcome to episode 264 of the Jays from the Couch radio podcast, brought to you by, of course, jaysfromthecouch.com. We're happy you're tuning in for another week of Blue Jays talk. If you're listening live, or I suppose watching live on Facebook or YouTube or Twitter, I want to send an extra special thank you to you. Love it. And of course, this platform allows you the opportunity to share your thoughts, your questions, etc. Live on the show. We'll put them up on the screen and we'll tell you why you are right and we are wrong. That's pretty much how it's going to go. But if you miss the live version and you're not able to participate, don't fret. You can always catch all of the episodes. Of course, on our Facebook page, you can go scroll back through. You can go to our YouTube channel. We've got a whole channel. All of our episodes there, including episodes of the On-Fex Circle and Sunny Side of the Dome, two other great quality shows that we provide for you. And the audio version of our podcast can be found on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, everywhere you find podcasts, you'll find Jays from the Couch. Hello. I'm your host, as always, Sean Doyle. You can follow me on Twitter at JFtC. We've got a great episode for you. We're going to talk some All-Star voting. I have some thoughts about the All-Star game, period. However, we may get into those. We got some Blue Jays leading baseball in vote getting, vote receiving. And we're going to talk about one Mr. Vlad Jr.'s MVP chances and maybe some other stuff too. So to help me do all of that, we've got host of Sunny Side of the Dome Thursdays at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, Karen Sutar. Good evening to you.
Good evening, Sean.
And it wouldn't be a Jays from the Couch podcast if we didn't bring on the yang to Karen's yin, the south to her North Pole, the host of the On-Fex Circle, Tuesdays, 6 p.m. Eastern Time on our YouTube channel. Steve Feck, good evening, sir.
Hey, Sean. Hey, Karen.
Hi, Steve.
All right. So we've got All-Star voting is happening. Okay, so Vlad leads the planet in Major League Baseball voting, vote getting. First of all, as an English teacher, this is really something that English, in particular baseball, has such advanced metrics and advanced ways of describing things, and we still can't come up with anything better than vote getting. The person who gets the most votes leads in vote getting. Like, getting is such a... Anyway, that's the English teacher in me hoping that we can come up with something better. However, I digress already, and we're only a few minutes into the show. So, Vlad Jr., leading the planet. And then we've got an interesting little kind of, they've done a top ranking, right, of outfielders and infielders and all of that stuff. And then they've just started again. Let's start it all over again because, why not, right? So my first question, the format. I'm going to ask you both. I want to ask you about the format. Karen, are you a fan of this revoting or does it seem like just a way to try and, once again, Major League Baseball trying to get force engagement?
Yeah, I don't know. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. To me, you've got one round of voting, and those votes count. So whoever wins wins. That's how I think it should be. And a question, and I don't know if either of you know about this. So you can only vote for one of the top three other than the outfield, which is a whole a whole other situation there. But let's say first base. So Vlad Jr. and two other guys who aren't nearly as good. And then when Vlad gets voted in as the starter, do the other two automatically make it as reserve, or are those still chosen by the manager?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I have no idea what tinkering they're doing with this year. I would assume that the reserves get picked by the coaches, people who actually know what they're doing. as opposed to anybody with an email address. So I don't know the answer to that question specifically, but I would hope that that the actual managers get to pick.
I believe that's correct. Of course, now you have to get into everybody has to have one representative. So
there's that.
Then isn't Jose Abreu in the top 3 for first baseman? Because if so, I don't think he's coming back in time for the All-Star game. So that throws another wrench into the deal. But way to go, Rob Manfred. That's way to go.
Yeah, I mean, and to me, that's exactly what it is. It's a lame attempt at trying to get this engagement going, right? Like, we voted and we got millions and millions of votes, and let's do it again, see if we can get more millions and millions of votes. It's just silly. And Sarah, P.S. Sarah's watching on Facebook. Shout out here to Sarah's mom, who was an English teacher. Teachers, we have to stick together. Thank you to all our teachers out there. One of the craziest years for teaching that I have ever been a part of. So shout out to all our teachers. Thank you so much for everything you do. All right. Anyway, so back to the All-Star thing. I don't get it. Why do they need to tinker with it? But like Karen said, if it isn't broken, don't fix it. But apparently, if it isn't broken, let's see if we can break it, is the motto of Rob Manfred and company. Anyway, whatever. So now we revote, right? Which is silly because All-Star games are a popularity contest. It's not about the best players, right? Let's be real here. It should be. It should be about those who are leading the planet in home runs, Vlad Jr., leading the league in all-around hitting, Vlad Jr. There are people who deserve it, and as Steve mentioned too, there are people who are there because every team has to have somebody. So I have no idea who the Pirates or the Tigers are going to send for crying out loud. But anyway, it is what it is. So here we are. Vlad, back on the ballot, obviously. Bo Bichette at short finished second. Marcus Semien finished first at second base. And then we have, of course, Vlad at first. And then we've got Teoscar Hernandez and Randall Grichuk making the cut. This cut is what we'll call it. So, Steve, I'm going to start with you, and I absolutely want to start with Marcus Semien.
Oh boy.
Leading second baseman in all-star voting, and leaving aside the fact that it's just a popularity contest. But Steve,
yes,
Marcus Semien, starting second baseman at the 2021 All-Star game, will be wearing a Blue Jays uniform. What are your thoughts about that months after he was signed?
Considering we may not have any all-star pitchers, I feel fine about Marcus. I mean, again, it's a fan vote. It's who the fans want to see in there. Semien has had a great offensive season. I mean, I admit I did not think he would come close to this or come close to his 2019. So we can just add that into the ever-growing pile of stupid things that I have said on this podcast. But we should also factor in that, I don't think that really changes the question with Marcus Semien. Was it a smart signing or not?
Right. And that's fair. That's fair because your original point was that they didn't need to sign Marcus Semien. But here we are, and we may have one half of the diamond starting wearing Blue Jays uniforms. So it's kind of cool. Karen, I'm going to turn to you now on Bo Bichette. Because I'm going to maybe play devil's advocate here, but is Bo Bichette an all-star shortstop?
At this point, looking at his performance this year and looking across the league, and if I'm going to do my best to take off the Blue Jay color glasses and be objective, I think he could be a reserve. I think Rafael Devers not Rafael Devers, Xander Bogaerts, excuse me, wrong infielder, right team. I think Xander Bogaerts has had the better season to this date. So if I'm being fair, he's the one that deserves to be the starter. I mean, Bichette, he actually started off the season a bit slow, as well as a number of Blue Jays hitters did. And there were a few that were hot early. Vlad Jr. has stayed hot. And then bit by bit, some of the others that we know have talent have heated up. And Bichette has really heated up lately. I like Bichette. I just wish that there were a couple of things, because he's gone on record more than once saying that, he wants to be one of the greatest players that ever lived. And good for him. Some people might say that's ego. I say good for him for having goals and believing in himself. I think he's got that kind of talent. I think he and Vlad has taken his rightful place, if you ask me, among, the discussion of the great young players in the game today. Fernando Tatis Jr., Ronald Acuna Jr., Vlad Guerrero Jr., lots of juniors, and Juan Soto. And I think Bo Bichette, with his talent and ability, he could be in that discussion, and he should be in that discussion. But there's a couple of things that I wish he would do to elevate his game, and I think he could be right there as well. But as of now, I'd say, a reserve.
Right. And Steve, I'm going to throw it to you here, and because it's an interesting little, I guess, thought process here when you talk about Bo Bichette and the All-Star game, right? Because when you watch Bo Bichette hit, there may not be a Blue Jays hitter who has a better approach. This is particularly with two strikes. And it's just, he's a smart hitter and a talented hitter. He's working on his defense, sure. But Steve, all of that isn't translating into an all-star year in 2021, is it?
Well, I think that it is, because you have the timely hitting. He's just fun to watch. I mean, Vladdy is off the charts talented. Bo Bichette is a ball player's ball player, and he squeezes every ounce out of his talent, and he has enormous talent as well. So for me, I would rather see Bo Bichette start, because he's fun. I mean, he's a fun player to watch. When he corkscrews himself on some of these swings, I don't know how he gets the ball past home plate, let alone into the gaps. But he's just a fun hitter, and his approach, his enthusiasm. I mean, I would rather see Bo start rather than Marcus Semien. Marcus Semien's had a better year all around. I mean, he's done very well defensively. So yes, he's more of an all-star. But from a fan perspective, I would say they'd rather see Bo Bichette, because he is fun.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. I would much rather watch Bo Bichette play. Marcus Semien puts up great numbers, but he's kind of boring. But Karen.
Just circling back, if I may do so, and I wanted to get your thoughts, and maybe you guys agree with this, and maybe you disagree. Guys say Bo Bichette, it's not that he's a poor player. He's already a very good player. To me, the biggest difference at the plate that I see between him and his good friend Vlad, who normally hits behind him in the lineup, is plate discipline. And if he could only learn, I don't know how many times I've watched him, and I've thought, geez, Bo, what the heck are you chasing that pitch for? It's one thing if it's borderline and he can get to it and get a hit, then fine. But I mean, he chases pitches at times that are just nowhere near the strike zone. And if he could learn to not do that, then pitchers would they'd be walking him right and left in front of Guerrero and in front of Hernandez behind him, and now Springer behind him. And this lineup is getting deep, deep, deep by the minute. But if he could stop doing that, then they'd either walk him or they'd have to come into him, because they don't want to pitch to Vlad. And that's when his already very good major league hitting would be that much better, because he would have strikes to hit.
Right. Right. And, that could be like maybe a topic for another day. But I think that Bo is, and as Steve said, part of what makes him fun is that he is aggressive in everything that he does. And if you're management, do you live with the aggression at the cost of some poor pitch selection or whatever you want to call it? Because when it pays off rather well. Or do you, try and say, hey, let's, and we're not talking about like Vlad trying to steal or take an extra base or something like that, something that, he probably can't or shouldn't do. We're just, Bo is an aggressive player on every, in every play. So I wonder, how much are you willing to sacrifice to have that kind of player, I guess, on the field for you, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's never going to be. Sorry, Steve. He's never going to be Kevin Biggio. But am I crazy for thinking? Keep the aggressiveness in the strike zone. Like, definitely be a really good judge of what you can and can't hit. And if you can hit away. And again, even if it's borderline, fine, take your chances. But some of the stuff I see him swing at sometimes, like, oh my God, what are you doing?
Yeah,
So,
yeah. No, I hear you, Steve.
Well, I think to a certain degree, I think if you take away that bonus, he's no longer Bo Bichette. I was trying to think of a better word, and that's the only thing that popped in my head. I apologize. English teachers out there, I know there's such a word as bonus, but okay, it's all right. But I think Bo really sets up at bats later in the game with his aggressive approach. I could be wrong, but I think he's the best first pitch hitter in the American League for sure, and maybe in the major leagues. I mean, he's just unbelievable on the first pitch. Now, does he have some bad swings? Yes, he does. But again, it's what makes him who he is. But I really do think his success later in games is because he takes some of those chances and some of those wild swings early, because then they get, okay, well, he was chasing this all game, I'm going to do that. And then he sits on that pitch and hunts it and drives it in big opportunities. So I would hate to see them change his approach whatsoever.
Right. So we're going to, I could talk about Bo Bichette forever. However, we still have a couple more all-stars, quote-unquote, all-star candidates. Teoscar Hernandez is on the second ballot. And just before we went on air here, we were sort of debating whether or not Teoscar Hernandez is an all-star. And if you're looking at his numbers, 11 home runs, 47 driven in, hitting 301 on base, 343, weighted runs created plus of 127. All of this, of course, in 57 games. So the question is, and Steve, I'll start with you, is Teoscar Hernandez an all-star?
I could see him be an ad as a reserve, like Karen was talking earlier about Bo. I mean, I can see him being added as a reserve. He's a great hitter. I mean, he really is. And I don't want to steal Karen's thunder, but since I got to go first, I'm gonna. She talks about how he went down for a brief time in 2019, and he came back. It was a different player. It was, I mean, I literally had to look at a scorecard, or actually went to Baseball Reference and say, is that really his number still? Is this really Teoscar Hernandez? Because from his first game back, he was a completely different hitter. So from that standpoint, he earned an all-star berth because he worked his way back to be a cleanup hitter in the major leagues. I'm not a big fan of his defense. I wish they would just make him a DH. And have a more defensively sound outfield. I know he led in outfield assists, but people have to not think you can throw them out and run as often to get that many outfield assists. I mean, they don't go running on the really big. They're not going to be running on George Springer, for example. I mean, but they'll run on Teoscar Hernandez. So I would rather see him as a DH, and not an outfielder. So that's where my hesitance saying, he's an all-star outfielder. But I mean, if he makes the team, obviously I'm going to be happy because he's earned it. He went back and he earned this berth.
Okay. And so, Karen, before I throw it to you, is Teoscar Hernandez, has he earned this All Star appearance in 2021? Or if he's an All Star, is it more that we kind of look at what he's done over the last, you know, season or two?
Yeah, I mean that's that's a really good point because and Steve, you took some of the words out of my mouth there. Where I mean Hernandez, he really struggled early in 2019, and finally they just seen enough, so they demoted him. He was in AAA for maybe 3 weeks, and he came back in early June, and like you said, he had managed to reinvent himself. He just looked like a completely different hitter. And it's interesting when I was trying myself to figure out a reason for his resurgence. And I remember at one point I speculated that, well, he and his wife were expecting their first child around then. And maybe he kind of got it into his head that, okay, I've really got to be serious and make a career out of this to provide for myself and my growing family type of thing. And there was an interview with him not that long ago, and it was the exact opposite. The family angle was there, but not in the way that I thought. He said that having the family and having children, being a father now, it's kind of his focus is on his family, and baseball is not his world anymore, and he can just go out and play. And I mean, and interesting that that's his viewpoint on it. Not at all how I thought, but obviously he knows what's going on in his head, and I don't. All we can do is speculate. But yeah, I mean, since that recall, which is going back around 2 years ago, I think he has really been one of the better hitters, certainly one of the Jays' better hitters, and really one of the better hitters in baseball. And last year, I mean, I'll be honest, his OPS was second in the league before he was injured and had to miss some time. He had a 995 OPS, second to one Mr. Mike Trout, if I remember correctly. And I believe that when he came back, he probably wasn't fully healthy, but the Jays were in a playoff hunt, and I think he wanted to come back and do the best that he could to help with the playoff hunt. So to me, his numbers this year are good, and they are all-star worthy. But I mean, you're kind of used to seeing some really gaudy numbers from a number of different outfielders, and from that standpoint, his numbers in 2021 might not be the best that there are, but myself, he was robbed of an appearance last year when there was no All-Star game, so I have no problem if he makes the team. I think he has earned it in his body of work the last couple of years. So,
And I'll have no problem if he makes the team. I just I wonder, because it'll be based on voting, right? So as long as Blue Jays fans start voting and vote often and all of that foolishness, then he'll be there, right? But it's just interesting to me when we talk about all stars, and perhaps the biggest example of this for this year might be the person we're going to talk about next. But it, I think back to Michael Saunders, right, when he had an unbelievable first half and then completely disappeared in the second half. And you have to ask yourself, like, his season numbers were great, but when you look at it, right, and Randall Grichuk is the last one we're going to talk about here, and I think he kind of is another example of that, right? We're used to, and we talked about this before we go on the air, that he's slow starts all the time. April, it's like it's like he's on the IL for 20 games, and then he gets going. Right, the power's there, the strikeout numbers are also there, but he does get going eventually. Well, this year he kind of started the other way, right? He started hot and now has tailed off to the point where we're looking at a man with 14 home runs short. That's great for an all-star. 267, that's not bad for an all-star. Weighted runs created plus 106, not bad for an all-star. But his OBP, his on-base percentage, it's under 300. So to me, I having a hard time. I don't know that Randall Grichuk is an all-star hitter. And maybe I'm having a hard time with it because I believe that the All-Star game should be about rewarding good, solid performances and standouts, right? So, Steve, I'm going to throw it to you. Is Randall Grichuk really an all-star?
Yes, a reserve. Not because of his on-base percentage, which I have to admit I was appalled when I actually researched for this stuff. I know people don't believe it when I'm on these shows, but I actually look stuff up. I was appalled it was under 300. And all the analytics people, okay, either block your ears or get ready to throw up because I'm going to use the word clutch hitting. He's a clutch hitter. Okay, such thing exists. If you can weight things and expect things, you can also agree that there's clutch hitting. Plus, he does everything well. I mean, there are so many hitters that strike out a ton. You can't dump on him for striking out. I mean, he's going to make his dough trying to drive the ball. He's a great defender. He's a good base runner. He is a complete baseball player. So for me, I would take Randall Grichuk over Teoscar Hernandez. Does Hernandez have better numbers? Yes. Is he a better overall hitter? Yes. Grichuk is a better overall player.
I'm going to respectfully disagree.
I'm getting used to it, actually, so that's fine.
Well, no. Usually, I can kind of see where you're coming from, and I can accept it. But no. Randall Grichuk at the plate is nowhere near what Teoscar Hernandez is, and I'm not even sure Teoscar Hernandez is an all-star. I can't.
Well, again, I didn't say he was a better hitter than Teoscar. I said he's a better overall player than Teoscar. The Blue Jays outfield is not better with him playing every day.
Defensively, no question.
Okay.
Right, but
good base runner. Yep.
Teoscar has better sprint speed.
Oh, great. Great. Is this a draft combine show now? Well, yeah. I mean, Anthony Alford. Boy, is he fast. He's fast. God, he's fast. Yeah, but he can't hit the curveball. But God, he's so fast. And I love Anthony Alford. It broke my heart. One of the saddest baseball performances I've ever witnessed of a player that I love happened this year in Pittsburgh with Anthony Alford. And you can go down the list. There's all of these players. Oh boy, yeah, he's, he looks good at the plate. Well, then why isn't he hitting? Well, but he looks really good. He's got a nice swing, but he's not hitting. But there's always something like that involved. Grichuk's just a better overall baseball player.
Well, I'm just agree to disagree, and maybe one week when we have more time, we'll reveal your Randall Grichuk tattoo, because of full disclosure.
You want to see my Ross Atkins tattoo? I have to drop my short.
It's a family show.
Oh, true. That's true. Okay.
Karen, Randall Grichuk, is he really an all-star? Or is Steve talking out of his Ross Atkins tattoo?
I see. Yeah. I mean, I can see some of what Steve is saying. Defense matters, and his defense has been pretty good overall this season. But those other numbers, and credit to Randall Grichuk, because early in the season he was one of the better hitters for the Jays. I mean, Vlad Jr. has been consistent all year, and so many of the other bats really got off to a slow start. And Grichuk was one of the few other guys who was hitting early. And as opposed to, because like you said, he's been, since he's been a Blue Jay, which has been since 2018, so it's 4 years now, we've seen that he typically gets off to very slow starts, and then he does much better later in the season, whether it's the warm weather, whether it's a timing thing, who the heck knows. But, and I mean, there were lots of people who I follow on Twitter were like, all excited about his hot start. And maybe this is it. Maybe this is the year that he puts it all together, because he's got some good talent. I'm not denying his talent. A lot of people were hopeful that maybe this is the year that he puts it all together and finds consistency overall for the whole season. And I mean, I didn't say no, he definitely won't. I said I'm hopeful, but I'm a little bit skeptical. And for me to be a believer, I want to see his numbers at the end of the season. And sure enough, unfortunately, he's he's done the reverse. He's gone into a slide later in the season. So I mean, he still does help the team with his defense, and he hasn't completely gone ice cold with the bat, but it's not what it was earlier. So for me, do I put him on the All-Star team if I'm deciding? Sorry, no.
Yeah, I don't either. And to be fair, I probably don't put Teoscar Hernandez on there either. But that's just me. But anyway, before we go, Vlad Jr., can we please just give him the AL MVP award right now? Because and this is the actual question. I know you're both going to say yes, but Karen, is there anybody who can catch him?
Oh, I mean, there are plenty of people that think it should go to Shohei Ohtani instead. And I mean, Shohei Ohtani, he's terrific. He's also a very good hitter, not as good as Vlad. Like, literally, nobody this season is as good a hitter as Vlad. When you look at the overall of everything, I mean, Shohei Ohtani is also a terrific hitter, and he's a terrific pitcher. So when you look at all that he brings to the team in that way, I understand him being in the conversation. I don't think he will be league MVP. I don't think he should be league MVP. And if you look back to the last time the Toronto Blue Jays had a league MVP, Josh Johnson had a phenomenal season. If you believe that wins above replacement are the be-all and end-all, well, once again, Mike Trout had more WAR that season than Josh Donaldson did. But Donaldson helped the Blue Jays to a playoff spot, and the Angels, once again, sadly, were not in the playoffs. And I can see a scenario like that again this year, where the Blue Jays make the playoffs, and a lot of that is because of Vlad. And if anything, that could tip the voting in his favor if it needs to be.
Yeah, totally. Could not disagree with anything you just said. Steve, should we just give Vlad the MVP award now, or does Shohei Ohtani give him a run?
Well, Ohtani gives him a run if the Angels make the playoffs. If they win the division, make the playoffs, I think he gives them a run. Does it mean that Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is not having the best season in recent memory of anyone? I mean, you have to go back to, I think, Trout of a couple of years ago to have a year like this. I mean, it's just unbelievable, and to a degree, it kind of hurts like a guy like Teoscar Hernandez, because Vladdy's so unbelievable, or even Bo Bichette, that as good as they have been, it's like, oh my God, I mean, Marcus gets his break because, well, it's a comeback year. He's come back after a tough year last year, so that's where Marcus gets kind of the flash. But I think Ohtani could, and especially if the Blue Jays do not make the playoffs, which I still contend they will not make the playoffs. If there is a player on a team that's having even 80% of the year that Vladdy Guerrero Jr. is, there are going to be writers out there that are going to vote for that guy because the team made the playoffs, and that's how they used to do it back in 1927. Right. That's how they voted for MVP. So, I mean, there aren't too many years that you have an Andre Dawson being MVP with the team that's not in the playoffs. So that's my big concern. My concern is not that Vladdy is going to fail or that he's going to falter. My concern is that the Blue Jays don't make the playoffs, and that's going to influence swing voters to vote for somebody like Ohtani.
Right. Well, we will continue the conversation because as of right now, the Blue Jays are within striking distance of the wild card, have moved up in the standings, and they're not in poor shape. They're not in like excellent shape, but they're getting there. They've made up some ground. So this will be a continuing saga, if you will, on the Jays from the Couch podcast. Thank you both for tuning in tuning in for, well, you were here, so thank you. But I do appreciate you taking the time. Let everybody know how they can follow you, Steve.
Well, you can follow me on Twitter at USofJs, but really, I just want to take this. I don't want to plug myself. Canada Day comes up this week, and the Blue Jays aren't going to be in Rogers Center. And I just want to say, even though I am USofJs, my heart goes out to you, Canadian Blue Jay fans, because this is the second straight year in a row your team is playing, and you're not going to be able to see one game live in person probably. So I just wanted to acknowledge that above myself, because really, who cares about me?
Well, I do.
Okay.
And Steve's show on Feck Circle Tuesdays at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. It's great programming, of course. Karen, let everybody know how they can follow you.
Yes, I'm on Twitter at Karen Sutar1. That's Soutar1, just like it's spelled there on the screen. And I'm on Twitter a lot, so love to talk about baseball or different things. Mutual respect, of course, is always important. And I'm on all by myself on Thursday evenings, sunny side of the dome. So doing my best to make sense. Thank you, Steve. Doing my best to make sense of the Blue Jays. I err on the positive side, but I also try to be a realist as much as I can. And that's my 2 cents.
Absolutely. It's must watch. Both shows. We have our live podcast Mondays at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, Tuesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, the On Feck Circle. Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time is Sunny Side of the Dome. I don't believe there's a single place out there where you can get this kind of Blue Jays content all up in your internet reach. So for Steve, for Karen, who else am I going for? Randall Grichuk. This is Sean Doyle. You can follow me on Twitter at DoyleJFtC. Hoping life gives you a juicy fastball down the middle and you don't miss it. Take care.